Hey Wes, welcome to this podcast episode with Buildify. And how are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having us. I'm
Aw-
I'm glad to chat with you about all things decentralization and AI.
Awesome, awesome. That's great, actually. So, firstly, let's begin with like a short intro about what you guys are actually building at EigenLayer. Like, if you can give us like a very concise explanation.
Yes. EigenLayer is building a platform for what we call a verifiable cloud. There are many services today in our Web3 world where people want to build decentralized services, but it's difficult. It takes time to build them, it takes capital to build them, and it takes time to onboard a network of operators. And so our goal is to bring together the capital, the infrastructure, and all the pieces so that folks that have an idea that want to build decentralized services can build them with EigenLayer as a layer of security and launch them more quickly.
Got it, got it. That definitely like sounds good because I know like EigenLayer is one of the most like the top ecosystem projects in the whole Web3 space. Also, like we already know that one of the like the two major offerings at EigenLayer are restaking and as well as the data availability layer like EigenDA. So I'm curious to know like how these two offerings benefit the AI application specifically.
Yes, no, that's a good segue. So yeah, to your point, EigenLayer is a much bigger platform and it's constantly growing. Restaking is the first component of the ecosystem that we've had in place in mainnet for the longest time now. There's a lot of people that have capital out in the Web3 ecosystem. They have native ETH or they have ERC20 tokens, and they like to stake that capital both for some rewards distribution and also ideally to align with some set of services that they personally believe in, they think have value, they have like real meaningful users and value. So restaking was the first primitive to EigenLayer. Those stakers effectively are able to delegate to any set of operators that they choose in the ecosystem. These operators could be professional shops like P2P or Kiln, and it could be LRTs. It could also be individuals. It could be solo operators, people who just want to run a node. But ultimately, what's happening is those allocators are allocating that stake that's been delegated to them and then registering into services. And the services could be compute, it could be a lot of Ethereum native technologies like bridges and MEVs and oracles that we spent a lot of time on initially. But it could also be AI services. It could be inference. You could build an AI training service, and you could have those operators running those services. So that's kind of just the core EigenLayer platform 101. EigenLayer has also built a service in-house, a first-party service, and that service initially was really focused on servicing layer 2 rollups. Layer 2 rollups have a big cost challenge in front of them, which is how do they store all their state in a scalable, cost-effective manner? And so the whole data availability space is meant to solve that problem. And EigenDA is a service; it's a decentralized service built on EigenLayer, but it is a data storage network. It's a specialized type of data storage network, specifically tailored to serve the needs of layer 2 rollups.
Got it, got it. Also, like I'm curious, like what role does Eigen's operators play in supporting these services on the platform?
Mm. Well, in a broad sense, an operator could be anyone, but I think that the best operators or the most effective operators are people that maybe they've run Ethereum validators in the past, or they've ran validators in the Cosmos and other chains, and they know how to run validators for a given chain. But in this new world, it's very different. In this new world, these folks are learning how to run services, and those services could all be very different. In an ideal scenario, the operator says, just tell me how to run your service. I want like a Docker container or a Kubernetes um, set of programs to run. And I want to run them well. I want to have good uptime. I want to earn rewards. But what's important though is that the person who defines the service, who writes the service, the AVS developer, will pay rewards for positive behaviors, but also they'll define conditions that are malicious potentially, because this is a trustless network of operators, and we assume that they could behave maliciously if they choose to. And so it's important that the operators understand what those bad behaviors are, what the bad outcomes are. Either the operator gets ejected, or maybe the operator doesn't get payment. They get payment withheld or excuse me, distributions withheld for some reasons. But also that they may be slashed and they may have negative consequences. So these operators are general purpose folks that are Web3 native that want to run technology and they want to earn incentives. But there's an important communication path so that they can do that effectively.
Got it, got it. Uh, Also, like next thing, we know that a lot of different projects or AVSs are getting built on EigenLayer for various other use cases. So, can you highlight like a few interesting AVSs or projects which are specific to AI and being built on EigenLayer?
Yes, yes, absolutely. We've been fortunate to have a number of teams building on EigenLayer that are focused on AI use cases and solution. A couple to call out are Hyperbolic and Gaia as examples. They are networks where you can run decentralized training, decentralized inference, similar to the solutions where you would rent a GPU online. For anyone that needs to run an AI workload, you can use them, and you can actually use them to run your AI workload but in a decentralized way. And, as the end user, you may not know about the operators. You may not need to worry or care about it, but what you're trusting is that those operators are going to run your workload, your inference workload correctly on your behalf. And these folks that are building on EigenLayer, Gaia, Hyperbolic, and others, they've designed the service in such a way that it's gonna verify itself autonomously. That's actually the name autonomously verifiable services means that those services run correctly, the operators are incentivized and disincentivized correctly. So it's very similar to using like a Web 2 tool at the end of the day for the end user, or what we call an AVS consumer. Uh, in the Web 2 world, we trust that the public cloud is running on our behalf. In Web 3, we have trust, but we also verify if we want to.
Yeah.
Um, there's one other interesting use case, like in particular for Eliza OS, we had an integration with Opacity. Opacity does zk-TLS, and even though zk-TLS is not in itself an AI-oriented technology, it's verifying communication to a server. We had some smart folks in our team that used the integration to verify that the bot, the Eliza chatbot, was only performing its inference through chatgpt.com. So it was not human oriented activities, it was purely AI. So those are some fun things that we're seeing, and I think hopefully it's going to be an investment area for us in the future.
Definitely, definitely. Uh, Also, like I'm very curious to know like what are the incentives for developers or builders who are like planning to build on EigenLayer or like utilize Eigen's services. Specifically, if you can highlight like grants or funding opportunities and all these things.
Sure. I would say, we don't have a public grants program right now, but I will talk a little bit about just funding generally and other things. I mean, so probably the easiest thing to talk about publicly is hackathons. So we invest heavily in hackathons. We just had a
Yeah.
couple massive hackathons at ETH Denver. So we had Eigen Games was one competition focused specifically on university students. We also had a hackathon at ETH Denver itself. So we were participating in the ETH Denver hackathon as a sponsor, and folks could win a lot of prizes from that. With some really excellent submissions there. And then also we had a third hackathon focused specifically on AI technology as well. So going into the next hackathon seasons with other major conferences, Dubai and others, we'll probably have some similar activities there. And then even though we don't have a publicly launched grants program yet, I will say over the past year, the investor sentiment and investment sentiment in teams that are building AVSs has been very strong. So there's no, explicit or formal program, but in the ecosystem and the network of folks building on EigenLayer, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm among the VC crowd as well. So, you know, Web3 is a very big world, as we
Yeah.
know, but within our niche, within Ethereum and I guess AVS ecosystem, the opportunities for new builders to seek funding, I think, is healthy, I would say.
Yeah. That's definitely very correct. Also, like previously before this, we talked about interesting AI services on EigenLayer, but I definitely know that there are a lot of other services also apart from AI which are being built on Eigen. So also, like what are the your favorite interesting projects who are like working beyond AI on EigenLayer, which you like personally like a lot? either use cases or projects?
Yes, yes, yes. Um, So aside from AI, you're absolutely right. Over the past year, we had some really smart, innovative builders launch on EigenLayer. If you go to app.eigenlayer to XYZ, there's a tab for AVSs. You can see the AVSs that are live on mainnet.
Yeah.
And a lot of those folks initially focused on primitives that are very important to the Ethereum community that help Ethereum scale. Things like ZK proving networks with Lagrange, um, automated keeper networks with Automata, Brevis, folks like that, folks that are building primitives, Oracle solutions like eOracle. There's just a bunch of like important things that folks want in the Ethereum community that previously were not as decentralized. That those sorts of competitive offerings, maybe they had to run on Amazon or something else. So that in itself was a really good first step. But now going forward, we see a lot of folks building solutions that you would call almost traditional cloud solutions, cloud infrastructure, Web 2 cloud infrastructure solutions. So if you wanted to build the next Twitter or the next Chat GPT or the next like general purpose like application in Web 3, today you don't really have the best solutions. You can't go to like the AWS console and say, I'm going to pick my compute and my storage and my database. But people are really starting to invest in that now. So I see some folks like K3 Labs is an example that's building functions as a service, Lambda. Like we all use Lambda for
Yeah.
various purposes and things like that. Um, Fleek Network is doing a good job of they have done a great job of building kind of like a cloud Web3 platform as well. And so um, it would be interesting to see if we could help those types of folks. I think just general like my hope and intention is that if Facebook was built by a developer in college that had just, minimum amount of time using basic tools like basic LAMP stack, it was so
Yeah.
commoditized and easy. In Web3, if we could have that same outcome so that the Web3 tooling was super easy and they could build the next like great app just on Web3 tooling, then we're in a really good place. And I think what's nice is within the EigenLayer ecosystem, you see folks building out these parts and pieces to get us closer to that outcome.
Got it. Got it. Definitely. Also, like, I would love to know what are your expectations from the Eigens builder? Like, what more use cases specifically would you like the Eigen community to target in future and like build specific to that? Like, what are your
Yeah,
favorite use cases?
yeah, absolutely. And I'll be happy to share with you. I created a tweet thread about a year ago of like use cases that I would love to see. Some of them I'm trying to build out myself, and others, hopefully other people will build out as well. But in general, I mean, even if you think about the most basic primitives that need to exist in a cloud stack, like you need to have storage, you need to have load balancing, you need to have general purpose compute, you
Yeah.
need to have a database, you need to have like log management. Those things seem sometimes not sexy because people like there's a lot of like fun like shiny objects in the
Yeah.
space. Um, but if we had those things, if developers in the ecosystem had those tools, they would get a lot of usage because I mean I was chatting with a developer in a nearby ecosystem the other day and they were designing a solution of how they were going to store a file. And I said to them, they were storing it on Amazon S3, and they're a Web3 developer. And I
Okay.
said, well, why don't you just store it on IPFS? And his
Yeah.
feedback was, well, if you store it on IPFS, you can't guarantee that it's going to be there. And
Oh.
I thought, wow, like, okay, this is an intelligent, sophisticated Web3 developer, but they had this opinion, whether it's right or wrong,
Yeah.
that exists. And so, how can we change that status quo so that like their first class tooling is decentralized and Web3 native? So there's a number of folks working on solving that. There's a team out of Lens called Lens Storage Nodes is looking at enhancing IPFS as an example, and compute other things. So I would say like if I had a wish list of folks to build, it's just rudimentary infrastructure, but build it in a way that's usable by a lot of application developers. Um, and I think that would make our space much more robust.
Got it, got it. So thanks for sharing the recommendations. And also, like we know that Eigen has been like a big part of Ethereum's ecosystem, and we saw that recently on Twitter as well. Like Ethereum specifically is facing like a lot of backlash. We can say like a lot of people are like expressing their opinions towards how Ethereum would look like. Then Ethereum also, I think, recently changed their foundational level guys and all. So I would love to know your thoughts on what do you think how the Ethereum ecosystem looks like, or how will it be in future, and how will it affect Eigen specifically?
That's a really good question. I don't know how the Ethereum ecosystem will evolve in the future. And you're right. I think there's been a lot of there's been a lot of constructive conversation in the ecosystem about Ethereum, things it can do to improve and otherwise. But I think generally that's positive. I mean, the fact that folks are actively wanting to improve, whether it's the marketing component of Ethereum or the scaling dynamics of Ethereum, this kind of conversation is healthy. And also, even though it may not happen as fast as like the Solana community would like for it to have, a lot of the Ethereum longtime people are former Bitcoiners. And so their perspective on timelines are very different. And so you have this contrast of these old school Ethereum crypto people that, look at things in multiple year time horizons and are very focused on censorship resistance and these sorts of things. Then you have these new developers that are also equally important that want to be a part of the Ethereum community that want, marketing growth, they want scale in their platform. And I think it's just a healthy tension or a healthy construction between the two because I think it can only make the platform better. I mean, the reality is like Ethereum is whatever we want it to be, like as a community, as a development
Yeah,
community, and it can flex. So it'll get to whatever the best consensus is over time. I mean, I won't speak for EigenLayer, but I will say that EigenLayer, just observing like publicly, EigenLayer has been very involved in the Ethereum community, and I've been at EigenLayer for almost 2 years now. We invested a lot early on supporting solo Ethereum validators and helping them become restakers also. That was a big focus. And I've heard that our leadership has invested a lot of time in, being a good steward with the Ethereum research ecosystem. So there's a lot of healthy relationship there generally. And hopefully that can continue. I think it will. I think, we all are Ethereum enthusiasts or maximalists here
yeah.
to some extent.
Yeah,
And so hopefully we can continue all that positive collaboration.
got it, got it. Like, coming towards our last question for this session, that would be like, what according to you, like, how does the future of EigenLayer looks like, and what more updates or what specific areas are you guys targeting for 2025 to be most focused on?
Yes, 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 yes. That's a really good segue. As of about 2 weeks ago, we released our first ever public roadmap for EigenLayer, and that's really exciting because, well, we had a smaller roadmap when we first launched, but it's been the first roadmap we've launched in some time since then. And so, if folks go to our docs.eigenlayer.xyz, they can look and they can actually see the roadmap of what we have completed, what we're working on right now, and then what we're focusing on in the future. And we break those up into a couple different areas, commitments, trusted primitives, verifiable sources. EigenDA in particular has a robust roadmap. There's a lot of improvements that it's rolling out right now, and then it's going to be focusing on in the future. There's mention of potential cross-chain AVS. How do I take the AVS that I built on Ethereum and expand its value across multiple chains? We've gotten a lot of feedback about that from customers. We are rolling out slashing to mainnet now, effectively, like it's in testnet and it's going to be in mainnet soon. And then, as sort of a next iteration of slashing, there's been a lot of discussion about, if someone slashes funds, like if you're an operator and I slash your funds, should those funds just be burnt into the protocol itself, or should they be redistributed to the person who was harmed? So that redistribution of slash funds is a really big area for us, both on the research side and also on the development side. Um, and so I think most of it's covered there. I think I'm just looking through the list with you real quick. I think it'll be the user experience for operators will also be a focus because we've gotten feedback from a lot of large operators that if they're managing and onboarding 10, 15 different AVSs, how can we make it easier for them to operate those AVSs effectively at scale? Can they have some consolidated monitoring that they can use, some lifecycle management as upgrades need to happen? There's a lot of sort of traditional tooling and things that we can make suggestions and best practices to help smooth that process on for those folks. So there's plenty for us to stay busy with, I think, in 2025.
Got it, got it. Also, like specific thing which you highlighted, like you guys will make the offerings more easier for people to use and understand. Because what I think is Eigen is doing fabulous job if you see in the whole Web3 ecosystem. But still, I guess most of the people actually don't understand what EigenLayer does. So I think that this issue will also be like resolved for this year. As I can see that you guys are working on plenty much of lot of things for community. So definitely thanks, Wes, for coming onto this podcast and sharing your thoughts and views about EigenLayer. And definitely looking forward to more about what EigenLayer does this year and also in the future. So thanks a lot for coming.
Likewise, appreciate it. Thank you for having us. Much fun.